The flight. The Dallas-Fort Worth airport bustled with travelers rushing to catch their flights, their chatter blending with the echo of rolling suitcases and distant announcements. Among them stood Clara Hampton, a striking woman in her early 40s, her tailored business suit and diamond earrings exuding an air of authority. Her polished leather briefcase sat neatly at her feet as she checked her boarding pass for the third time in irritation. Flight 423 to Boston was delayed by an hour, disrupting her meticulously planned schedule. She was heading to a major conference where her keynote speech would undoubtedly cement her reputation as one of the pharmaceutical industry's top players. The delay only heightened Clara's impatience. She had worked tirelessly to reach this pinnacle in her career, and every minute wasted felt like a personal affront. As the gate agent finally called for first-class boarding, Clara strode confidently toward the jet bridge, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floor. Settling into her plush seat by the window, she glanced around at the other passengers filing in. Her focus landed on a man in his late 20s or early 30s wearing a faded military uniform. His broad shoulders and confident gait suggested a soldier, though his worn duffel bag contrasted sharply with the crispness of his demeanor. Clara stiffened as he stopped at her row. "Excuse me, ma'am," the man said politely, gesturing to the seat next to hers. "I believe I'm in 2B. Clara hesitated, her lips pursing. She forced a smile, her tone clipped. "Of course." As the soldier stowed his bag in the overhead compartment, Clara caught herself rolling her eyes. She had seen it countless times, soldiers expecting special treatment simply because of their uniform. Her fingers tightened around her leather briefcase as she settled back into her seat. The man, whose name tag read Corporal M. Dawson, seated himself with a slight wince. Clara noticed the stiffness in his movements, though she dismissed it as theatrics. "I suppose you got a nice military discount for that seat," she remarked, her voice dripping with disdain. Dawson turned to her, his expression composed but his jaw tightening ever so slightly. "No, ma'am. Full price." Clara raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "You don't have to play coy. People like you always find a way to milk the system." Several passengers nearby turned to look at Clara with disapproval. Dawson, however, remained calm, pulling a photograph from his pocket and staring at it quietly. "What's that?" Clara asked, her tone biting. "Your hero moment. Saving puppies or posing with kids overseas." Dawson held the photo protectively, his voice steady. "This is my daughter, Emily. She's 5. Clara snorted. "Oh, of course. The family angle. Let me guess, you're off to save the world while leaving her behind." Dawson placed the photo back in his pocket, his face unreadable. "No, ma'am. I'm on my way to Boston Children's Hospital. Emily has stage 4 neuroblastoma." For a moment, Clara was taken aback, but she quickly masked it with an exaggerated sigh. "Another sob story. Let me guess, you're hoping for some pity donations or a free pass." Military families seemed to thrive on it. The tension in the cabin thickened. A middle-aged woman across the aisle glared at Clara, but Dawson simply looked out the window, his hands resting on his lap. The flight attendant arrived with the drink cart, offering a complimentary beverage to Dawson with a warm smile. "Thank you for your service, sir." Clara gestured sharply. "See, this is exactly what I mean. Special treatment." "No, thank you," Dawson said quietly to the attendant. "Just water, please, and I'll pay for it." The attendant hesitated but respected his wishes. Clara buried herself in her laptop, pretending to work but unable to ignore the soldier beside her. His composed demeanor grated on her nerves. When turbulence jostled the plane, Clara noticed Dawson wince, his hand briefly clutching his side. As his sleeve slid up, she glimpsed a jagged scar running down his wrist. "Combat injury?" she asked, unable to resist. "IED blast in Mosul," Dawson replied without elaboration. "Lost 3 teammates that day." "Well," Clara scoffed, "that's what happens when you sign up for war." This time, Dawson turned to her, his gaze steady. "Ma'am, I don't expect you to understand, but not everything is as simple as it looks." Clara shrugged dismissively, turning back to her laptop. As the plane descended into Boston, Dawson checked his phone. Clara couldn't help but overhear snippets of his tense conversation. "I'm here. Yes, I know she's stable, but just keep her comfortable until I arrive." His voice cracked slightly, though he kept his composure. Clara remained silent, but something in his tone lingered in her mind as she exited the plane. She quickly pushed it aside, determined to focus on her conference. Later that evening, Clara checked into her luxury hotel, eager to unwind. But as she scrolled through her newsfeed, a headline stopped her cold. "Decorated soldier fights for daughter's life against rare cancer." She clicked the article, her heart sinking as a photo of Corporal Dawson appeared. He was in a hospital room, holding a frail little girl with tubes attached to her small frame. Her wide, bright smile contrasted sharply with her fragile appearance. Clara read on. "Corporal Matthew Dawson, awarded the Bronze Star for bravery during his service, now faces a battle at home. His daughter Emily suffers from a rare and aggressive cancer. Despite his injuries sustained in combat, Dawson has taken on multiple jobs to cover the cost of experimental treatments not covered by insurance." The words blurred as Clara's eyes filled with tears. Images of their conversation on the plane flashed in her mind. Every dismissive remark, every cutting word. The memory of his steady calmness haunted her. How had she been so cruel? Her fingers trembled as she continued reading about Emily's journey, the struggles her father endured, and the community's efforts to raise funds. The photo of Emily's radiant smile pierced through Clara's chest. She sat back in her chair, stunned. For the first time in years, her relentless ambition felt hollow. Clara knew she couldn't undo her words, but perhaps she could find a way to make amends, a glimmer of remorse. Clara awoke the next morning with a sense of unease that she couldn't shake. The plush bedding and luxurious suite that usually brought her comfort now felt suffocating. She opened the curtains, letting the Boston sunlight flood in, but it did little to brighten her mood. The memory of the article she had read the night before and the look on Corporal Dawson's face as he spoke about his daughter lingered like a shadow. She glanced at her phone. Her social media feed was filled with updates from the pharmaceutical conference. Pictures of smiling colleagues and captions boasting about networking victories made her stomach churn. For years, this had been her world. Endless ambition, polished facades, and cutthroat competition. But today, the thought of attending the conference felt meaningless. Clara's gaze drifted to the corner of her room, where her leather briefcase sat unopened. Inside were her conference materials, the notes for her keynote speech meticulously prepared. But they seemed irrelevant now. She couldn't focus on pitching new treatments or touting company achievements when the face of a 5-year-old girl fighting for her life was burned into her memory. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at her hands. They were perfectly manicured, like the rest of her, but they felt empty. Clara thought of Dawson's hands, rough, scared, and steady as he held the photograph of his daughter. She remembered the way he spoke about her with quiet determination, even in the face of her relentless disdain. For the first time in years, Clara felt ashamed. She had built her career on her sharp wit and confidence, but now those same qualities felt like flaws. Her cruel words to Dawson replayed in her mind. "Your kind expects everything handed to them," playing the sympathy card. Clara winced at the memory. She had been so wrong, and she knew it. She spent the morning pacing her hotel room, unsure of what to do. Apologizing felt inadequate, yet doing nothing seemed unthinkable. Clara wasn't the type to admit when she was wrong. It wasn't a trait that had served her well in business. But this wasn't business. This was something deeper, something she couldn't ignore. Unable to sit still any longer, she opened her laptop and searched for the article about Dawson again. This time, she read every word slowly, absorbing the details of his story. Emily's cancer was aggressive, and the experimental treatment she needed was costly and unproven. The article mentioned that despite the community's fundraising efforts, they were still far from their goal. Dawson had been working multiple jobs, pushing his already injured body to its limits to give his daughter a fighting chance. Clara's chest tightened as she scrolled to the bottom of the article, where a link to the fundraising page was displayed. Without hesitating, she clicked on it. The page featured a photo of Dawson and Emily together in her hospital room. Emily was smiling, her small head bald from chemotherapy, while Dawson sat beside her, his arm protectively around her shoulders. The fundraising total was painfully short of the target. Clara stared at the number, her mind racing. She had the resources to make a significant donation. Her salary and bonuses had afforded her a life of luxury, designer clothes, a penthouse apartment, vacations in exotic locations. But how much of it had truly mattered? She pulled out her credit card and entered an amount that made her hands tremble. $25,000. It was the largest single donation on the page, but even as she clicked the confirmation button, it didn't feel like enough. Determined to do more, Clara began researching the treatment Emily needed. She pored through medical journals and pharmaceutical reports, leveraging her industry connections to find any information that might help. Hours passed as she read about the experimental protocol, its limited success rates, and the bureaucratic hurdles that families faced in accessing it. Finally, Clara made a decision. She picked up her phone and called her company's charitable foundation. "This is Clara Hampton," she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "I need to discuss a potential grant for a pediatric oncology case." The foundation director was surprised. Clara rarely involved herself in charity cases unless they aligned with her career goals, but her reputation as a persuasive negotiator meant her requests were taken seriously. Over the next hour, Clara outlined Emily's situation, emphasizing the urgency of the treatment and the potential for the foundation to make a tangible impact. By the end of the call, Clara had secured a commitment for an additional $50,000 donation, contingent on her presenting the case at the next board meeting. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a start. That evening, Clara drove to Boston Children's Hospital. She had called ahead to confirm that visiting hours were still open, though she wasn't sure what she would say to Dawson if she saw him. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she navigated the unfamiliar streets, her mind racing with a mix of guilt and resolve. When she arrived, the lobby was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos she had expected. She approached the front desk, where a kind-looking receptionist greeted her. "I'm here to see Corporal Matthew Dawson," Clara said, her voice faltering slightly. The receptionist nodded. "He's in the pediatric oncology wing, room 217. Just follow the signs." Clara thanked her and made her way through the hospital. The halls were lined with colorful murals and artwork designed to comfort young patients, but the air was heavy with the weight of the battles being fought within these walls. When she reached room 217, Clara paused outside the door. Through the small window, she saw Dawson sitting beside Emily's bed. He was reading to her, his deep voice soft and soothing. Emily was curled up under a blanket, her tiny frame almost lost in the hospital bed. Her eyes were closed, but the faintest smile played on her lips. Clara's chest ached at the sight. For a moment, she considered walking away. She wasn't sure she deserved to intrude on this intimate moment after the way she had treated Dawson. But then Emily stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "Read it again." Dawson chuckled softly. "For the third time. You really love this one, huh?" Emily nodded, her smile growing. "It's my favorite." Clara recognized the book in his hands, The Tale of the Brave Princess. It was a children's story about a young girl who faced impossible odds with courage and kindness. The symbolism wasn't lost on Clara. Summoning her courage, she knocked lightly on the door. Dawson looked up, his expression momentarily guarded before softening in recognition. "Miss Hampton," he said, standing and placing the book on the bedside table. "What are you doing here?" Clara hesitated, her carefully rehearsed words suddenly fleeing. She looked at Emily, who was watching her with wide, curious eyes, and then back at Dawson. "I came to apologize," Clara said finally, her voice trembling, "for how I treated you on the plane. For the things I said. I was wrong." Dawson's expression remained neutral, but his eyes searched hers as if trying to gauge her sincerity. "I read about Emily," Clara continued, her voice gaining strength, "and about everything you've done for her. I didn't realize, I didn't understand. But I want to help, if you'll let me." For a moment, the room was silent except for the beeping of the monitors. Then Dawson nodded, his posture relaxing slightly. "Thank you," he said simply. Emily tilted her head, her small voice breaking the tension. "Who's she, Daddy?" Dawson smiled. "She's someone who wants to help us, sweetheart." Clara crouched to Emily's eye level, her heart swelling at the sight of the little girl's bravery. "Hi, Emily," she said softly. "I'm Clara, and I think you're the bravest princess I've ever met." Emily beamed, her tired eyes lighting up. "Do you like princesses too?" Clara smiled. "I think I might start." In that moment, she knew her life would never be the same. The plan. Clara left the hospital that night with her mind racing. Meeting Emily had stirred something deep within her, a fierce resolve to do more than just apologize and donate. For the first time in years, she felt a purpose that wasn't tied to quarterly earnings or market shares. Emily's bright eyes and brave smile haunted her, a constant reminder of what truly mattered. She returned to her hotel room, ignoring the stack of work she had brought for the conference. Instead, she opened her laptop and began researching pediatric cancer treatments, experimental therapies, and fundraising campaigns. The numbers were staggering. Millions of dollars poured into research, yet so few breakthroughs reached children like Emily in time. Clara had spent her career navigating the labyrinth of pharmaceutical bureaucracy, but this time, she wasn't interested in profits or prestige. She was determined to cut through the red tape and make a real difference. The next morning, Clara called her assistant, Sophie, who had stayed behind in Houston, to handle office matters. "Sophie," Clara said, her tone brisk but unusually emotional, "I need you to clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks. Cancel all meetings and let the conference organizers know I won't be attending any panels." Sophie, accustomed to Clara's single-minded focus on work, was taken aback. "Is everything okay, Miss Hampton?" "Yes, but I have something more important to focus on." "I'll explain later," Clara replied, already opening another browser tab. "And Sophie, one more thing. Pull every contact we have in Boston. I need connections in event planning, media, and philanthropy. This is urgent." Clara's mind buzzed with ideas. She wasn't just going to donate. She was going to build something. Something big enough to bring real attention to Emily's fight and raise the funds her family needed. By midday, Clara had assembled a rough plan. A charity gala, the kind of event that could pull in high-profile donors, corporate sponsors, and community leaders. Clara had attended dozens of similar events, usually as a guest of honor, and she knew how they worked. But this one wouldn't be about networking or schmoozing. It would be about Emily, her story, and the thousands of other children fighting similar battles. She started making calls, leveraging every connection she had in the city. Her first call was to an old college friend, James Parker, who now ran a successful event planning company in Boston. "Clara Hampton," James said, laughing as he answered. "It's been years. What's the occasion?" "James, I need a favor," Clara said, skipping the pleasantries. "I'm organizing a charity gala, something urgent and personal. I need your best team on this." James, always eager for a challenge, asked, "What's the cause?" Clara hesitated, her voice softening. "A little girl named Emily. She's 5, and she's fighting cancer. Her father's a soldier, and they need help." James was silent for a moment, then said, "I'm in. Send me the details." Next, Clara reached out to local businesses and vendors. She called florists, caterers, decorators, and even entertainment companies. Her pitch was simple and heartfelt. This is for a child who deserves a chance to live. Can you help? The responses were overwhelmingly positive. A premier catering company offered to provide their services at cost. A renowned florist agreed to transform the event space into a whimsical garden free of charge. Clara's connections in media ensured that the event would receive coverage, drawing even more attention to Emily's story. But Clara didn't stop there. She contacted her company's charitable foundation again, this time pitching a matching donation program. Every dollar raised at this event will be matched by the foundation, she told the board of directors during a hastily arranged video call. This is an opportunity to make a real impact. After some deliberation, the board agreed. Clara felt a surge of relief, but she knew the hard work was just beginning. That afternoon, Clara returned to Boston Children's Hospital to share her plans with Corporal Dawson. She found him in the same spot as the previous night, sitting beside Emily's bed. He looked exhausted, his uniform slightly rumpled, but his focus remained entirely on his daughter. "Corporal Dawson," Clara said, stepping into the room. "May I have a word with you?" Dawson looked up, surprised but not unkind. "Of course, Ms. Hampton." Clara hesitated, glancing at Emily, who was dozing peacefully. "I've been working on something to help you and Emily. I'd like to organize a charity gala to raise funds for her treatment and bring attention to her story." Dawson blinked, his expression unreadable. "A gala? That sounds ambitious." "It is," Clara admitted, "but I believe it can make a difference. I've already started organizing it. Event planners, vendors, media coverage. Everything's falling into place." Dawson leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Why are you doing this?" Clara met his gaze, her voice steady. "Because I was wrong about you, about everything. And because Emily deserves a chance. I can't undo the things I said, but I can try to help now." For a moment, Dawson didn't respond. Then he nodded slowly. "If it helps Emily, I'm on board. What do you need from me?" Clara smiled, relief washing over her. "Just your permission to share her story. I want people to know who they're helping." "You have it," Dawson said. He glanced at his daughter, his expression softening. "Anything for her." Over the next few days, Clara threw herself into the project with an intensity that surprised even her. She worked long hours coordinating every detail of the event, from the menu to the guest list. She personally wrote press releases, emphasizing Emily's courage and Dawson's sacrifice, ensuring the story would resonate with potential donors. She also spent time visiting Emily, bringing small gifts and reading to her when Dawson had to step away. At first, Emily was shy, but she quickly warmed to Clara, often calling her Miss Clara, the fairy godmother. One afternoon, Clara brought a special surprise, a custom-made princess dress for Emily to wear to the gala. Emily's face lit up as she saw the shimmering gown, her eyes wide with wonder. "Is this for me?" she whispered, touching the fabric delicately. "It's for a real princess," Clara said, kneeling beside her. "And that's exactly what you are." Emily beamed, and Clara felt a lump rise in her throat. This wasn't just about raising money anymore. It was about giving Emily and her father hope. As the gala approached, the buzz around the event grew. Local news stations ran stories about Emily and the efforts to fund her treatment. Social media was flooded with posts about the gala, with celebrities and influencers pledging their support. Clara's tireless efforts were paying off, but she remained focused on the ultimate goal, saving Emily's life. On the eve of the event, Clara stood in the ballroom, overseeing the final preparations. The space had been transformed into a magical wonderland, complete with twinkling lights, floral arrangements, and a stage for speakers and performances. Everything was perfect. As she looked around, Clara felt a rare sense of pride, not for her accomplishments, but for the impact this event would have. For the first time in years, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. Tomorrow, she thought, would be the beginning of a new chapter, not just for Emily and Dawson, but for herself as well. The gala. The night of the gala arrived with a flurry of activity. The Boston Children's Hospital ballroom was unrecognizable, transformed into an enchanted garden of twinkling lights, cascading flowers, and shimmering decorations. The theme was A Night for Emily, and every detail reflected the bright, hopeful spirit of the little girl who had inspired it. Guests began arriving early, dressed in elegant attire, their chatter filling the air with excitement and anticipation. Clara stood at the entrance, greeting attendees with a gracious smile, but her mind raced with the weight of the evening. She had spent every waking moment ensuring this event would succeed, not for her own reputation, but for Emily and Corporal Dawson. The turnout was already impressive. Prominent business leaders, philanthropists, and even a few local celebrities had RSVP'd. Clara's years of networking were finally paying off in a way that felt meaningful. As the crowd mingled, Clara's assistant, Sophie, approached with an urgent expression. "Miss Hampton, the press is asking for a quote before the event begins. They're particularly interested in why you've personally taken up this cause." Clara hesitated. She had been careful to avoid making this about her, but she knew the media attention could amplify the event's impact. She straightened her shoulders and walked toward the waiting reporters, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "This gala is about hope," Clara said, her voice steady despite the cameras and flashing lights. "Emily Dawson is a brave, beautiful child who deserves a chance to fight. Her father, Corporal Matthew Dawson, embodies resilience and sacrifice, working tirelessly to give his daughter that chance. Tonight, we're here to support them and to remind ourselves of the power of community." The reporters pressed for more, but Clara kept her answers concise, deflecting attention back to Emily and the importance of the cause. When the interview ended, Clara slipped away to find Dawson and Emily. She found them in a quiet room just off the ballroom, where Emily was being dressed in her custom-made princess gown. The little girl's face lit up when she saw Clara. "Miss Clara," Emily exclaimed, spinning slowly in her dress. "Do I look like a real princess?" Clara knelt to Emily's level, her heart swelling with emotion. "You don't just look like a princess, Emily. You are one." Emily giggled, her eyes sparkling. Dawson, who was adjusting his tie in the corner, turned to Clara with a grateful nod. "I can't thank you enough for all of this," he said, his voice low but sincere. "You've done more for us in a few weeks than I could have ever imagined." Clara shook her head. "This is the least I can do. You and Emily deserve every bit of support we can give." Dawson studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why go to all this trouble for us?" Clara hesitated, unsure how to put her feelings into words. Finally, she said, "Because I was wrong. About you, about what you stand for. About so many things. Meeting Emily changed something in me. This isn't just about making up for my mistakes. It's about doing what's right." Dawson nodded, his gaze softening. "You've already done more than enough." "No," Clara said firmly. "Not yet." As the gala began, Clara took her place at the podium to deliver the opening remarks. The ballroom, now filled to capacity, fell silent as she stepped into the spotlight. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This event isn't just about one family. It's about what we can achieve when we come together to support each other." She paused, scanning the room. Emily Dawson is a 5-year-old girl with a heart full of courage and a spirit that inspires everyone she meets. Her father, Corporal Matthew Dawson, is a man who has given everything for his country and his daughter. Tonight, we have the chance to give something back to them. Clara's voice wavered slightly as she continued. "When I first met Corporal Dawson, I didn't understand the depth of his sacrifice or the strength of his love for Emily. But over the past few weeks, I've seen firsthand what it means to fight for someone you love. And now, I'm asking all of you to join that fight." The audience erupted in applause as Clara stepped down from the podium. Dawson took her place, holding Emily's hand as he addressed the crowd. "Thank you," he began, his voice strong but emotional. "Thank you for being here tonight, for supporting my daughter, and for giving us hope. Emily is my everything. She's the reason I keep going, no matter how hard it gets, and seeing all of you here tonight reminds me that we're not alone." Emily waved shyly at the crowd, her smile melting every heart in the room. The applause grew louder, and Clara felt a surge of pride as she watched father and daughter standing together under the spotlight. The rest of the evening unfolded like a dream. There were moving speeches from other families who had faced similar battles, live performances that brought tears to the audience's eyes, and an auction that raised staggering amounts for pediatric cancer research. Clara worked tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring everything ran smoothly. But the most powerful moment came when the auctioneer announced the final total, $1.2 million. The room erupted in cheers, and Clara felt tears streaming down her face. The goal had not only been met but exceeded beyond her wildest expectations. Dawson found her afterward, his expression one of disbelief and gratitude. "Clara," he said, his voice breaking, "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "Just keep fighting for Emily. That's all the thanks I need." As the gala came to a close, Clara stood by the entrance, watching the guests leave with smiles and tear-streaked faces. She felt a sense of fulfillment that she hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't about her career or her image. It was about something far greater. Dawson and Emily approached her, Emily clutching the small bouquet of flowers someone had given her. "Miss Clara," Emily said, her voice soft but earnest, "this was the best night ever. Thank you for making it so magical." Clara knelt and hugged her tightly, tears threatening to fall again. "You're the magic, Emily. Don't ever forget that." As they left, Clara stood alone in the now empty ballroom, her heart full. She had come to Boston as a woman focused on her own ambitions, but she was leaving as someone entirely new, someone who understood the power of compassion, humility, and redemption. And she knew that this was just the beginning of her journey. A battle beyond the gala. The morning after the gala dawned with a quiet stillness that felt surreal to Clara. After weeks of relentless planning and sleepless nights, the culmination of her efforts had left her both exhausted and elated. The $1.2 million raised the previous night had exceeded every expectation, but as she sipped her coffee in the hotel lounge, Clara knew the fight for Emily's life wasn't over. The gala had been a success, but it was just a stepping stone. Treatments for pediatric cancers like Emily's were grueling, expensive, and often experimental. There were no guarantees. Clara found herself thinking not just about Emily, but about the thousands of children facing similar battles. For years, she had worked in pharmaceuticals, seeing these struggles from a distance. Numbers on a spreadsheet, quarterly reports, and press releases. Now those numbers had faces, and one of them belonged to a little girl who called her Miss Clara, the fairy godmother. Clara's phone buzzed, snapping her from her thoughts. It was Dawson. "Good morning, Corporal Dawson," she answered, her tone warm. "Good morning, Miss Hampton," he replied, his voice steady but tinged with fatigue. "I just wanted to thank you again. Last night was incredible. Emily hasn't stopped talking about it." Clara smiled. "I'm glad she enjoyed it. How's she feeling today?" "She's tired, but she's happy," Dawson said. "The doctors are running some new tests this morning. They're optimistic about starting the next round of treatment." "That's good to hear," Clara said, though her stomach twisted. She knew how fragile hope could be in cases like Emily's. Dawson hesitated before continuing. "I've been meaning to ask, what's next? You've already done so much, but I can't shake the feeling that you're not done yet." Clara chuckled softly. "You know me too well. I've been thinking about that too. I have some ideas, but I'd like to run them by you first." "Of course," Dawson said. "Let me know when you're free." Later that day, Clara visited the hospital. She found Dawson in the waiting area outside the pediatric oncology wing, a coffee cup in hand and dark circles under his eyes. He stood as she approached, his expression a mix of gratitude and curiosity. "I didn't want to bother you in Emily's room," Clara said, gesturing to a nearby bench. "Let's sit." They settled into the bench, the hum of hospital activity around them providing a strange backdrop to their conversation. "I've been thinking about how to make a lasting impact," Clara began. "The gala was a huge success, but it's not enough. Families like yours shouldn't have to fight so hard just to access treatment. There's so much bureaucracy, so many financial barriers. It's unacceptable." Dawson nodded, his gaze fixed on her. "What are you suggesting?" "I want to start a foundation," Clara said. "Something that provides direct support to families facing pediatric cancer. Not just financial aid, but advocacy, resources, and a way to navigate the maze of healthcare systems. And I want you to help me lead it." Dawson blinked, caught off guard. "Me?" "Yes, you," Clara said firmly. "You understand this fight better than anyone. Your perspective, your determination. It's exactly what we need. Together, we can build something that changes lives." Dawson was silent for a moment, his hands gripping the coffee cup tightly. "I don't know, Miss Hampton. I'm just a soldier. I don't know anything about running a foundation. And I didn't know anything about organizing a gala until 2 weeks ago," Clara countered. "But we made it work. You've been fighting for Emily with everything you have. This is just another kind of fight." Dawson exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I'll think about it, but I have one condition." "What's that?" Clara asked. "The foundation can't just be about Emily," Dawson said. "It has to be about every child, every family going through this. I don't want her to be a symbol of what was lost. I want her to be a symbol of what we're fighting for." Clara's throat tightened. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Clara returned to Houston, but maintained constant contact with Dawson and the hospital. She hired a team of lawyers to help establish the foundation, pulling from her vast network of contacts. She worked late into the night drafting proposals, reaching out to potential donors, and outlining the foundation's mission. Dawson, true to his word, became an active partner in the effort. He balanced his time between Emily's treatments and virtual meetings with Clara, offering insights and ideas that only someone with his experience could provide. He insisted on naming the foundation after Emily, calling it the Brave Emily Initiative. The foundation's launch event was scheduled for 3 months later, but Clara's focus remained on Emily's immediate needs. The money raised at the gala allowed Emily to begin the next phase of her experimental treatment, which showed early signs of promise. Clara kept close tabs on her progress, visiting Boston frequently and checking in with Dawson daily. One afternoon, Clara received a call from Dawson that made her heart race. "Miss Hampton," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "The doctors just gave us the latest test results. The treatment is working. Emily's cancer is shrinking." Clara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That's incredible news, Corporal Dawson. I'm so happy for you." "It's just the beginning," Dawson said. "But it's more hope than we've had in a long time." Clara felt tears welling up. "You're right. It's just the beginning. And we're going to make sure this hope extends to every family who needs it." The foundation's launch was held in Houston, with Clara and Dawson standing side by side as they unveiled their mission to the world. The event was attended by business leaders, healthcare professionals, and families who had already begun benefiting from the foundation's support. Emily, now 6 and sporting a head of soft, growing hair, was the guest of honor. As Clara watched Emily play with other children at the event, she felt a profound sense of purpose. This was more than redemption for her past mistakes. It was a new chapter, one that she was determined to write with compassion, humility, and unwavering resolve. For the first time in her life, Clara wasn't just climbing a ladder. She was building a legacy of hope, 6 months after the launch of the Brave Emily initiative, Clara Hampton stood on the stage of a packed auditorium in Houston. The annual gala of the foundation had become a symbol of resilience and community, drawing supporters from across the nation. This time, however, the event felt different, more personal, more significant. The lights dimmed slightly, and the room fell silent as Clara stepped up to the microphone. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Tonight marks a year since I met a little girl named Emily Dawson and her remarkable father, Corporal Matthew Dawson. Their courage sparked a journey that changed my life, and I hope the lives of countless others." She paused, glancing toward the front row, where Emily sat in a shimmering blue dress, her father beside her in his military uniform. Emily's face glowed with health and happiness, a far cry from the frail little girl Clara had first met. The sight filled Clara with a bittersweet joy, a reminder of the battles fought and the victories won. "When we launched this foundation," Clara continued, "our goal was simple: to provide hope and resources for families facing the unimaginable. But this journey has taught us that hope is not a simple thing. It's a lifeline, a promise, and a call to action. And it is my deepest honor to stand here tonight and tell you that together, we've delivered that promise." The audience erupted into applause, but Clara wasn't finished. She gestured to the large screen behind her, which lit up with photos and videos of children who had been helped by the foundation. Smiling faces, hopeful eyes, and heartfelt messages filled the screen, each one a testament to the impact of their work. "These are the true heroes," Clara said, her voice breaking slightly. "The children and families who have faced their battles with courage and grace. And tonight, we renew our commitment to them." After the speech, Clara joined Dawson and Emily at their table. Emily's eyes sparkled with excitement as she reached for Clara's hand. "Miss Clara, did you see me in the pictures?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. Clara smiled, squeezing Emily's hand gently. "I did, sweetheart. You looked like the bravest princess there ever was." Emily giggled, leaning against her father. Dawson, who rarely showed emotion in public, gave Clara a small, grateful smile. "You've done more than we ever could have asked for," Dawson said quietly. "I don't know how we can ever repay you." Clara shook her head. "You've already repaid me in ways you can't imagine. This foundation, this mission, it's not just about helping others. It's given me a purpose I didn't know I was missing." Dawson's expression softened. "Emily wouldn't be here without you. That's a debt I can never repay." Clara's gaze shifted to Emily, who was now playing with a bracelet someone had gifted her. "You don't owe me anything, Matthew. She's alive because of your strength, your love, and her own incredible spirit. I'm just grateful I could be a small part of her journey." The gala continued with speeches, performances, and auctions, raising another staggering amount for the foundation's work. Clara moved through the crowd, thanking donors and sharing stories of the families they had helped. Every conversation reinforced her belief in the power of community and compassion. But as the evening wore on, Clara found herself drawn to the quiet balcony overlooking the city. She stepped outside, the cool night air a welcome relief from the bustling energy of the event. The view of the Houston skyline reminded her of how far she had come, from a woman consumed by ambition and ego to someone who had found true fulfillment in helping others. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Dawson approaching. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Not at all," Clara said, gesturing to the space beside her. They stood in silence for a moment, the city lights twinkling in the distance. Finally, Dawson spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said when we started this foundation," he began, "about how you wanted to make up for the mistakes you'd made." Clara nodded, her gaze still fixed on the skyline. "It's true. Meeting you and Emily forced me to confront things about myself I wasn't proud of." Dawson looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "You've done more than make up for those mistakes. You've created something that's going to outlast all of us. That's a legacy, Clara. And it's one Emily and I are proud to be a part of. Clara felt a lump rise in her throat. She turned to Dawson, her voice soft. I couldn't have done it without you. You and Emily are the heart of this foundation. Dawson smiled faintly. We're just one family among many. But if our story can help others, then it's worth it. As the gala wound down, Clara returned to the ballroom to say her final goodbyes. She hugged Emily tightly, promising to visit soon, and shook hands with Dawson, whose gratitude shone through his quiet demeanor. That night, as Clara lay in her hotel bed, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. A chance encounter on a plane, fueled by her own arrogance and prejudice, had led to something extraordinary. She had found redemption not in words, but in action, and she had discovered that true success wasn't measured in accolades or wealth, but in the lives she had touched. The Brave Emily initiative had become more than a foundation. It was a symbol of hope, a lifeline for families in need, and a testament to the power of compassion and community. And for Clara, it was the start of a new chapter, one filled with purpose, humility, and an unwavering commitment to making the world a better place. As she drifted off to sleep, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She wasn't just living for herself anymore. She was living for Emily, for Dawson, and for every child whose story had yet to be written. A new chapter. The weeks following the gala passed in a whirlwind of activity for Clara. The Brave Emily initiative had not only raised significant funds, but had also captured national attention. Media outlets ran stories about the foundation, and donations poured in from unexpected places. Celebrities began endorsing the cause, and partnerships with major corporations ensured that the foundation's impact would continue to grow. Despite the success, Clara stayed grounded, spending as much time as possible with Emily and Dawson. She made regular trips to Boston, often sitting with Emily during her treatments or accompanying Dawson to meetings with doctors. Clara had never been close to children, but Emily had become a fixture in her life, a reminder of why she was fighting so hard. One day, as Clara was visiting Emily's room at the hospital, Dr. Patel, Emily's oncologist, entered with an encouraging smile. I have good news, Dr. Patel announced, holding up a chart. Emily's latest scans show remarkable improvement. The treatment is working even better than we hoped. Clara and Dawson exchanged a stunned glance, and then Dawson dropped to his knees beside Emily's bed, tears streaming down his face. You hear that, Princess? He whispered, his voice choked with emotion. You're getting better. Emily clapped her hands, her small voice bubbling with excitement. Does this mean I can go to the park, Daddy? Dr. Patel laughed gently. Not quite yet, Emily, but you're getting closer. We'll keep monitoring you. But things are looking very promising. Clara felt her own tears welling up as she watched father and daughter embrace. This moment, more than any gala or donation total, made all her efforts worthwhile. In the months that followed, Emily's condition continued to improve. She was eventually declared in remission, a milestone that brought both relief and celebration. The hospital staff, who had grown to love the spirited little girl, threw a small party in her honor, complete with balloons, cake, and, at Clara's insistence, a visit from Emily's favorite Disney princess. You're my hero, Miss Clara, Emily said, hugging her tightly during the celebration. You made all the magic happen. Clara knelt down, her heart full. No, Emily, you're the hero. You showed us all what it means to be brave. As Emily's health improved, Clara and Dawson shifted their focus back to the foundation. They expanded its reach, creating programs that provided financial assistance, counseling, and advocacy for families battling pediatric cancer. They launched partnerships with hospitals and research institutions, funding groundbreaking treatments that offered hope to children across the country. Dawson, initially hesitant about his role, grew into a powerful advocate. His story resonated deeply with donors and policymakers, and his unwavering dedication inspired everyone around him. Clara often joked that he was the face of the foundation while she worked behind the scenes, but the truth was they had become a team. Two unlikely allies united by a shared purpose. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Clara and Dawson sat in the foundation's office, reviewing proposals for the next phase of their work. The room was quiet except for the hum of the computer and the occasional rustle of papers. "You know," Dawson said, breaking the silence, "if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be doing this, I wouldn't have believed them." Clara smiled, setting down her pen. "I wouldn't have believed it about myself either. But life has a funny way of surprising us." Dawson leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "You've changed a lot, Clara." "So have you," she replied softly. "But I think we've both changed for the better." They shared a quiet moment, the weight of everything they'd accomplished settling around them. For the first time in a long time, Clara felt at peace, not because the work was done, but because she knew they were on the right path. The foundation continued to grow, its impact rippling out in ways Clara had never imagined. But even as the years passed, Clara never forgot the moment that had started it all. A flight to Boston, a chance encounter with a soldier, and a little girl's unwavering spirit. Emily's bravery had inspired something far greater than either Clara or Dawson could have envisioned, and while the work was never easy, it was always worth it. Epilogue. 5 years later, Clara stood backstage at an auditorium, preparing to give the keynote speech at the annual Brave Emily Initiative Gala. The foundation had grown into a national force, helping thousands of families and funding critical research. Clara herself had become a respected advocate for pediatric cancer awareness, her corporate past a distant memory. As she stepped onto the stage, the audience rose to their feet, their applause thunderous. Clara smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude and pride. In the front row sat Emily, now a healthy and vibrant 10-year-old, her father beside her, beaming with pride. "Good evening," Clara began, her voice steady. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the success of this foundation, but the incredible journey that brought us here. It started with one little girl, one story of courage and resilience, and it grew into something extraordinary." She paused, her gaze settling on Emily. "Emily taught me, and all of us, that even in the darkest moments, there is light, and when we come together, when we fight for each other, we can achieve the impossible." The audience erupted in applause, and Clara felt a wave of emotion wash over her. This wasn't just the end of a chapter, it was the continuation of a legacy of hope, love, and the unshakable belief that together, they could change the world. And as Clara stepped down from the podium, she knew one thing for certain. She had found her purpose, and it was only the beginning.